Hello everyone, it's me, King Seeker France. I like to pleasure myself with my mouth before I eat doo-doo. Okay, I'm not doing that the whole way through. Alright, is video number 2... Wow, people are going to have no idea what they're getting into. This is video number 2 of the Trifusion series. If you don't know what that is, go back to video number 1. If you don't know where video number 1 is, I can't help you because I'm a terrible human being. Okay, but this time around, in the Android 18 launch and Zangief little series, we'll be fusing together Android 18 and launch into a character that, after some thought, I guess I can only call Lanli or something. And my logic of that is, I can't really, I could call her like Android L or something stupid, but that's kind of dumb. 18's not her real name. We'll go into this later, but her real name, technically, according to Toriyama anyways, is Lazuli. I was hoping it would be Lapis, because it actually sounds like a pretty name, but no such luck. So, let's get started, I guess. Ta-da! Ooh, they materialize right in front of you. How magical. Alright. So... Oh, the reason why I call her Lanli... Well, that's pretty much the only thing I can do to combine their two names. Otherwise, it's going to sound absolutely horrendous. Lanli is as pretty as I can possibly make it. Because launch and Lazuli... Ugh. Just because... Why, Toriyama? Why? So, you know, what are you going to do? Lanli. This is about as good as it's going to get. Either that or it's like Lanzanch, I don't know. It's just horrible. Every option's terrible. Sometimes you get those. That's the bad part of it. Sometimes the fusion of the actual characters is fine, but the name is horrendous. Can't help it. Okay. Maybe I'll figure out something new by the time this video is complete. But for this one, I'm going to spend quite as much time on the live commentary, primarily because I just want to sit here and draw quietly. Because that's actually the kind of person I am. I just like to sit down and draw my pretty ladies in peace. Yes, so much peace. So many erections. Alright, so I think I'll use this one as the base. It kind of is reminiscent of this one. So I'll probably end up trying to combine the two of these in some capacity. If I can figure out where she is. Is this one? Yes, it is this one. Excellent. Alright. So first off, kind of the same general rules. Not going to do the whole thing, probably. But I will go over some key features that we're going to be looking out for. I've already sort of explained this in the first video in regards to all the rules that are kind of associated with the launches design, since I already did her first in combination with Zangief. But of course, hair parts here, there's always one strand here. There's always kind of this shape right here. It needs to go out to about this distance. There's always this one curl. Curls back down into the part, which is always here. Curls back down, and then there's sort of an open area where there might be some curls or might be anything. But point being, it kind of extends out to about this distance away from the face. And that's what we're going to be looking out for in regards to her design. And her general facial distance and everything, kind of the same as it is with all of his characters, aside from Zangief. Zangief was really strange in how her face was so incredibly compressed. It's really bizarre looking. So there's not much more to talk about in regards to launch. Although they are very similar. Like, I've been over this, but Zangief 18 are basically just clones of one another in various ways. Launch is probably the least reminiscent of those two, of the three. You get what I'm trying to say. But, for example, eyes on 18, always enclosed, very sort of mechanically geometric, whereas launches are more, usually they're open. In this picture, the line is closed off, but usually her eyelashes are like this. So we'll be combining the two of these into something that probably looks slightly less curved and does close off or almost closes off. If it doesn't close off, I'll just leave a little bitty open end right there and come down right here and give it a little bit more of an angular look right here so it's not quite as curved. And so her general eye shape will be something like this. And kind of important to carry over the Android-looking eyes, where there's no shading. Like, there's no glare right there. I might give it a slight glare, but I'll have to remember not to go overboard with it. Eyebrows are pretty much the same. They're drawn in a very similar fashion. 18 depends on who the key frame artist is. This is kind of fucked up looking to me. But usually her nose is probably a little bit bigger than some other characters are. I think she's supposed to be a little bit more Western looking or something like that. Probably something racist. Yes, good old racism. That's the hot topic today. Yes, excellent. But her nose will probably just be a simple maneuver like that. Nothing to write home about. Nothing King Seeker Framp wants to care about. What? You're probably wondering why I wanted the King Seeker Framp thing. I have no idea. I'm just crazy, I guess. Now, her hair is probably going to be the most recognizable thing. It's probably going to be the most difficult to actually combine. She does sometimes have this one strand coming down right there, which we can combine with this one. The main problem is that Launch's hair parts on this side mostly. Like, most of the weight of the design is going to be on this side. Whereas 18's parts on the other side. So, good way of combining this, I guess. Because it's going to... 18's hair is very recognizable. And there's not much flourish to it, since it's very, very straight. Whereas Launch's hair is very curly. So what we're probably going to have to do is just add a little bit of flourish to her hair in the same general areas. There are some parts that are the same. The hair parts in the exact same way. There is still that kind of curve right there. So what we might be able to do is just bring where her hair parts a little bit over from this area over here, since this is so far over. Give her this one strand. Although I'll probably have to be more careful about that once I get around to it. And instead of it just coming all the way up over here, on this part of the parts, we will come down a little bit. And might even actually pull the... Might even just leave it that way, I'm not sure. I'll play with that for a bit and see what sticks. But otherwise, it's probably going to be a bit like that. And it still needs to be well, since she has straight hair and since she has curly hair, what I'm probably going to do is make it sort of wavy looking. Because that's going to be the best in-between that we can get in regards to their design. So instead of it just being straight like this, even though I'm sure a lot of people will just want me to redraw Android 18. Because a lot of people, oh, Android 18, whoa, my wiener, oh, it's going crazy. So they will take aversion, take offense to the idea of me not drawing it exactly the same because it appeals to their utmost fetishes. But this is a Trifusion. You don't get that as a important factor here. And I'll probably put a little bit of the bow. I think one or two people were wondering why the bow was so small in the prior one. That's because if one character has an element of the design that the other one does not, what you usually do is include that element, you just shrink it down. Because why would it be exactly the same size if you're doing an in-between of the two characters? That is, you're doing a fusion of them. It's kind of funny, some people were criticizing that I was even doing another Trifusion, because it was not in vogue anymore, like I give a shit. I'm not the one that made the damn thing in the first place. It doesn't matter if it's popular as a meme anymore or not. Like I give a shit. Alright. And the face is generally going to be the same. Although I think Launch is a little bit more... It's a little bit longer, in a way. Or it sort of tapers further down. Like Android 18's is sort of more curved down like that, whereas Launch's... It depends on the frame. But usually she has this more old Dragonball look to her. Kind of funny that these two frames right here are actually a little bit similar to one another. Except this one's kind of fucked up looking because there's so much 5-head going on over here. But it'll be something like that. Nose will be around here. Eye level, mouth level will probably be right around here. So we're going to bring some of her face down a little bit to match Launch's. And so it'll be something like that. I'm going to try to make her hair a little bit longer, though. This arm is kind of getting in the way of my visual, but Her hair will probably be a little bit longer. I might actually bring it all the way down. I'm not sure yet. One of those things I'm going to play with. But if I do bring it down, I'm probably going to have to draw it blowing or something so that you can actually see it, because I am going to be using this pose as the base. Another reason why I'm trying to rush through this is so that I can get to more bitching. Because who doesn't love bitching, right? I think most people actually enjoyed the prior video. But I was sure that some people would get very excited about me talking about Gohan and then realize I was mocking Gohan and just get very angry and resentful about it. There were a couple people that seemed like they were very angry and resentful in general. But I think that's just because of the need for, like, I like thing, therefore thing is flawless, which is a big problem on the internet. Things cannot have flaws, but you can still enjoy them. A lot of people are like that, especially young people. It's impossible for them to enjoy something without this notion that it is 100% perfect, which you can't have that attitude in Dragon Ball. You cannot have that attitude. It will not last long. I think I'll retain the skirt. I don't think I'm going to be giving her jorts or anything anytime soon. I might actually turn her little shorts into a skirt. I'm not sure. If I do that, I might have to bring over the leggings, though. Something I'll think about in the future, but the most important thing is that we retain the line. Like the visual line, which is the same with both characters. Here, here. Same thing with her. Here and here. So, nothing to worry about there. Most of that's going to be pretty simple. I don't know if I'm going to carry over the jacket. Probably not. I'm probably not going to carry over the jacket simply because the Zangia design has the jacket. And when I combine it with her, that one's definitely going to have a jacket. And the prior fusion also had one, so I want to keep this open as an option. Plus, since Launch doesn't have a jacket at all, then it is perfectly acceptable for her not to have one. Especially since this one already has the little sleeves to worry about. So I can very easily just carry over the sleeves and have that be an accommodation for the rest of the Launch design. And for the time being, I'm just going to place this arm down here just to get it out of the way. Wrist always needs to be at crotch level. We'll keep that there. Elbow always needs to be at kind of rib cage level, except that's kind of fucked up in Toriyama's case because he always makes the upper torso so incredibly small for some bizarre reason. But we'll just keep that there. It's a little bit more forgiving on a female character design because their waist is so much higher than it's going to be on a man anyways. Let's see. But that's the general rules that we're going to be abiding by. And that's the general things that you're going to have to look for whenever I'm going to be speeding through this as I complain about Launch's backstory. Which I'm sure I'm going to have a lot of fun doing, because there's a lot to talk about in that regard, because Launch is probably my favorite character in Dragon Ball. Tien's probably my favorite male character, but he kind of got left behind. I will say that Future Trunks in the latest kind of Super Arc basically just is Tien. Like, if you think about it, he has Tien's personality. He's very humble, self-spoken, kind of humorless. You get what I'm saying. But anyways, getting sidetracked. This is what we're looking at in regards to the future of this design. King Zika Fram signing off. Now to draw more pornography. Yes. Alright. See you guys next video. Take it away, Future Eli. Okay. This time around, I will get around to actually talking about Launch this time, as I promised in the last episode. I got sidetracked by hating Gohan. Won't do that again, probably. But I will also point out I probably won't be talking much about 18 this video, but that's primarily because she has another video coming up right after this one, which will be her and Zangia being fused together. And since Zangia is kind of a nothing character, and she's just a design that barely has any dialogue, not much to talk about in regards to her, so next thing will probably, unless I get sidetracked again, which is very likely, considering I'm me, I will end up talking about her in that video. So, this is Launch's time to shine. Gohan shall not distract me this time, no matter how terrible of a character he actually is. I will say, it is abnormally difficult to pull any images of Launch to use in thumbnails, because she hasn't been drawn in the series in a very long time. And as a result, it's kind of hard to find high-resolution images of her. So everything that I'm going to pull up for these thumbnails is going to be super blurry. Especially compared to 18. Since 18, even though she hasn't been really utilized particularly well since her inception, since she was turned into a broodmare for Krillin, which is another topic. She at least has good resolution images, so good on her. Good job, 18. Okay, so, as I mentioned in the last video, 18 probably my favorite female character in the series. Might be my favorite character in this series, in terms of just being a character. There's a lot of people that in this series, like for example, I've kind of thought about it recently, and I've decided I don't like Goku. And that's kind of an easy thing to say these days because it's gotten to the point in Super and especially after Z and in the movies where Goku has to do absolutely everything. He has to solve every problem. He's the source of most of Earth's problems, if you think about it. Like a good portion. If Goku did not ever come to Earth in the first place, the vast majority of things that actually happened to the Earth would not have happened. Like the Red Ribbon Army would still be around. Well, include Piccolo in that as well. Like the Dragon Ball. If aliens never came to Earth, a lot of problems never would have happened. Like King Piccolo, the Demon King Piccolo thing would have never happened. The only thing that really would have been bad would be the Red Ribbon Army. And other than that, I guess you could argue Buu would have still happened, but there would not have been enough high-level fighters for Babidi to drain energy from, so that probably wouldn't have happened either. But he still probably would have gotten the egg and then left, but there would be no reason for him to actually cause a ruckus. So, either way, my point being, Goku kind of causes a lot of problems. But it's not even because of all that. It's because I just don't like Goku's character. He's just kind of, he's gotten worse over time, but in Dragon Ball, I like Goku. I like Dragon Ball Goku. Because he's just a hick. That's his whole thing. He's not stupid, necessarily. He just has no idea what's going on around him. He doesn't know what a city is. He doesn't even know what a woman is. Like, he's never seen one before. Everything is highly confusing to Goku, and that's the source of the comedy in Dragon Ball. Because Dragon Ball, early Akira Toriyama, is a joke manga. It's not really Z-level amounts of fighting for no reason. So, Dragon Ball, Goku, absolutely fine. But as he's gone on, he's grown into adult, he should know better. Never has never kissed his wife in a recent retcon, which is not exactly a retcon, but just kind of stupid. He's gotten progressively stupider to the point of being, like, I'm not even using this in a derogatory way, but he seems to be legally retarded now. Like, again, not derogatory, just like really, he seems to be legally retarded now. He's just incapable of functioning at an actual human level of intelligence. It's very bizarre. He creates a lot of problems. He allows enemies to create problems because he wants to fight. He doesn't think things through. He almost ends up killing Trunks and creating problems in the future timeline and the recent arc of Super several times over. He's just kind of stupid. And he's also very abrasive, and he kind of puts his foot in where it doesn't belong. He's just overall kind of just a bad person. So, don't really care that much for Goku. I kind of got off on a tangent there. Again, being distracted. But point being and all that, I guess, is that there are a lot of characters that have a lot of activity in Dragon Ball that are more prominent than Launch, certainly. That's for damn sure. But I don't really like them for it. I don't really dislike them for it either. I dislike Goku for just being Goku. Not just because he does everything around everyone else and everyone has to abide by his every whim. Which is also true. It kind of, like, I like Piccolo because he's actually intelligent. He uses his head. I wish he was more powerful. Wish he was more prominent. I even like Vegeta sometimes, although he can be insufferable in his own way. But a lot of the characters in Dragon Ball are people that are there. I don't actively dislike them, and I kind of like them sometimes, but because of the writing, of course, they're kind of just annoying a lot of the times. Or they do intentionally stupid things because the writing itself can be stupid. You get what I'm saying? Launch does not really do that. This is one of the things I like about her. Whenever she was originally introduced, she of course was just a generic joke character. Haha, it's funny. They found the perfect woman for Master Roshi. She's the perfect Japanese woman. Black hair, black, quote unquote, black hair, like Japanese anime likes to do. And, she's so meek, and she's the Shrine Maiden trope. Oh, she's just so wonderful. Oh, she sneezes, and now she's an angry American woman. How awful! Oh my god, this is terrible. What a guffaw this is. Ha ha ha. And of course, like many characters that are kind of driven by a single joke, it wears thin very quickly. But rather than just getting rid of her, one of the things that Toriyama actually did, and I'll give him credit for this, is he actually ended up turning Launch into a real person. Like, she ends up becoming a real character. More so the blonde one than the black-haired one, the purple-haired one. Blue-haired Launch, whatever you want to call her, she kind of just exists. She doesn't really do much of anything. She never really develops as a person. She kind of just behaves the same way up and down throughout the entire series. She doesn't really react to anything that's happening around her. She doesn't really, she doesn't grow as a person. Her behavior never really changes. So, you could debate which one is the real one. Like, they're sneezing in and out of different forms, right? Like, that's Launch's thing, is that she has the blonde-haired version, and then she has the black-haired version of her design. And they portray her usually as the black-haired one, as the one that's the real one. And whenever she sneezes, she gets angry. And it's almost like the black-haired one is the one that's suppressing the knowledge of everything that's happening around her. And the blonde one is the one that kind of bursts out and finally has had enough and actually reacts to the things that the black-haired one actually knows is going on, but won't actually say anything about. It's like she's a Japanese person that transforms into an American person or something. Really bizarre. But those are her two forms of character. And the black one, the black one, I should be careful about saying that shit. But the black-haired one never really changes, never really develops as a character. She just remains in that state for her entire being. She's just nice, she's inoffensive. So, in a way, I would say that the blonde one is actually the real one. In the sense of, she's the one that's an actual person. Like, she actually does things. She changes. She, goes through a range of emotions, eventually. And, ignore the boofing and the crowing in the background. It's just farm life in the beginning of the day. And, for that reason, I would probably say that the blonde one is closer to being the real one, which kind of makes it more upsetting that she went out the way that she did. But whenever she was established, of course, she was just a jokey character. And as time went on, I guess Toriyama kind of got tired of that joke, or he realized that he couldn't just keep making that one joke over and over and over again. And so, it got to the point where the blonde one actually was the one that was kind of doing most of the legwork for the character. It got to the point where you actually saw her most of the time, and you didn't really see the blue-haired one that often. And that was probably because Toriyama actually wanted her to do something other than just, oh, who wants to eat? I will make food for everyone. I'm such a little princess. Ha ha ha. I will laugh at the silly things you boys are doing. And that's all she really does. She kind of just exists. She's nothing. And, at first, Launch just hates all of them. Because one of the first experiences she has is Master Roshi trying to trick the stupid black-haired one into getting into lingerie as a quote-unquote training outfit, joke manga. And, of course, she sneezes, turns into Blonde Launch, and Blonde Launch immediately is like, what the fuck are you doing to me? And, of course, hilariously pulls out a gun and shoots all of them. But it's Dragon Ball, so none of them get hurt, I guess, whatever. Joke manga, once again. She doesn't like them. Like, she starts out detesting all these people. But she also needs a place to stay, and it's kind of free food and lodging, although she does wander off from time to time. But eventually, it gets to the point where she kind of hangs around them more and more, and she kind of develops an actual friendship with them. And I think the kind of highlight, the top point of this kind of gets to be where it's the end of the tournament after Tien and Goku have fought. You know, Launch actually confesses her feelings to Tien, which is kind of, it's supposed to be a joke, although they end up carrying it over to Z briefly. She says, I love your wildness, and she kind of just out of nowhere confesses that she's fallen in love with him, which, you know, that's the joke, because it's the angry blonde Launch, and no one would expect anything out of that from her. But she does just go from being this perpetually angry, violent super criminal to just being a girl that, you know, she still has her personality, but, you know, she has other things that she wants. And it seems like they go out to eat, and she might be in the, no, I think she is in the blonde form still during that scene. And that's whenever the Demon King Piccolo shit starts to happen, and Krillin ends up getting killed. And Launch is the one that actually ends up carrying his body, and you can tell that she's kind of changed a lot, because she has gone from hating all these people, you know, and threatening to kill them and whatnot, and now she's like visibly like furious with what's going on, and, you know, she wants revenge for what happened to Krillin and everything. And, you know, she's come at least that far. And another scene that comes to mind later on is whenever Tien and Yamcha and everyone are training at Master Roshi's place. And it seems like the Mafuba shit has already started to go down. And my favorite, I've drawn a picture of this before, but I think I showed it in the first video. I think I did. Where it's one of my reference images. But it's my favorite frame in Dragon Ball of her. And it's just her kind of reclining against the door frame in a casual outfit. Just watching both of them train. You know, just watching Yamcha and Tien spar. And yeah, it's just kind of this very clear indication that it's become kind of normal for her. And, you know, this is now her family. You know, I kind of like that about her. So, in the Dragon, like, this is not like major life-changing stuff or anything. But in Dragon Ball, of all series, where character development almost never happens. And in Dragon Ball, where I guess the closest thing to a major character development with the major kind of quote-unquote real characters, the A-listers, would probably be Piccolo. Because he goes from starting out, like, he gets barfed up by his dad. He kind of considers himself to be the reincarnation of the Demon King Piccolo. But he kind of ends up eventually developing his own personality. Then he trains Gohan. Then he becomes a sort of good guy. And he kind of just stays that way for the rest of time. And he kind of ends up getting turned into a daycare worker by Super. Like, he doesn't really fight or anything anymore. He kind of just hangs around raising everyone's kids for them, since they're too lazy to do it themselves. But he does have some character development. But that's about as far as it goes. Dragon Ball's not known for its character development. So, Launch, to me, I always really appreciated that. It's probably because it was unintentional on Toriyama's part, and he was just having her be around and react in a way that he thought was logical for any person. So it seems like her character development ended up being completely accidental, but because of that, to me, it feels very natural for her. Like, it actually feels like something that would happen to someone over time. So, for that reason, that's why she's my, favorite character in Dragon Ball. Because she actually develops as a person. She goes from being this stupid joke that's really not that funny, although it is kind of moderately funny sometimes, into, being a real person. And a real person to the point that the blue-haired one kind of just doesn't really have much of a purpose anymore. And by the way, if you're wondering about these little arm sleeves things, it's not part of her outfit. It's like an arm sleeve. Like, if you wear those whenever you play basketball and stuff sometimes too. And they're also kind of just sold individually as fashion little things for women, usually. You just pull them up under your sleeves. So if you're wondering why they kind of just lead to nowhere, that's why. It looks kind of interesting. Like, I thought that it made her actually look unique to be able to have those, but also have the bare shoulders. That's kind of why I kept it that way. I thought it was a pretty good fusion of the two. But anyways, no need to talk about drawing whenever I can ramble about my autistic spurgingness over old Dragon Ball. Yes. Alright, anyways. But as we all know, launch kind of just vanished into nothing. And this is kind of the thing I want to get into, that I kind of mentioned at the beginning of the end of the last video. Is that the final thing that we ever see from launch, in terms of the manga and then the anime, although in the anime they add like one or two little brief scenes, I think like in the Buu saga where she steps out of her truck that she's inexplicably driving to help with the spirit bomb. Even though I think even in the dub they tried to play it off as she's just an unrelated character. And it seems like in the original dub, she steps out and goes, "Oh, he sounds cool," and then just gives her energy up. And they pretend that she doesn't even exist. But the last thing that we ever see of her in Z is Nappa and Vegeta come to Earth. It's cut out of a lot of releases, but a lot of people have never seen even the scene where she abducts a huge amount of, what was it, like bakers, I think it was, and has them all make a bunch of food for Tien because she's trying to romance him. And I kind of don't like this scene because to me it's backtracking on her character, because by the end of Dragon Ball she has developed well past being like this. Like, she doesn't even do this sort of stuff anymore, and she hasn't done stuff like that in multiple seasons. So to me, like, I never liked that scene because it kind of just reduces her character to me for the sake of some dumb joke that wasn't even really funny. But there is that scene whenever Tien and Chaozu are training by a waterfall, and Launch is following them around looking for them, sneezes, turns into her blue self, kind of just wanders around for a bit doing nothing because she's fucking Blue Launch and no one cares. And then she turns back, and it's a whole thing, but it's kind of a nothing scene, but it happens before that. That happens before her final scene in Z. So Tien basically tells her, I don't like you. I don't like these things that you're doing because you abducted all these bakers and you're not paying them any money and you want to go rob banks, and that's wrong, Blonde Launch, whose character has now done a complete 180 from Dragon Ball for no reason, other than Toriyama had one joke scene that he had in mind. And so he leaves. That's kind of it. That's their last real interaction with one another. And that's kind of sad if you think about it. Tien basically, telling her off, saying, everything that you like, I detest. I don't like you. Get out. I don't want to see you again. Ooh, rough. So the very last thing that you see with her and Z is Nappa and Vegeta come to Earth. This is quite a ways after the Raditz stuff. And she can see on the news that they're fighting, and Tien has just died. Like, he did his last little Kikoho, and, he's gone. So Blonde Launch is drinking herself to death in a bar because everyone thinks it is the end of the world. Because, the ground is shaking, everyone is freaking out, there's looting going on. Tien, the only person that she ever cared about in terms of romantic feelings, is dead. So there's just nothing left for her as far as she's concerned. So she's just sitting there just drinking. And there's no resolution to that scene. At this point, Toriyama forgets that she exists. Like, he forgets to resolve that scene, and he kind of forgets her along the way. And that's the last time we ever see her in the entirety of Z. As far as her canon appearances, anyways. Aside from that one scene I described earlier with her getting out of a truck. So that's it for her. She just drinks herself to death in a bar, thinking that the only person that she ever loved is dead, and she just feels like dying herself. And that's it. That's the last time we ever see Blonde Launch, specifically. Like, even the one stepping out of that car is not Blonde Launch, it's just the stupid black-haired one. So that's it. That's the last we've ever seen of her. But this does lead into something else that I was going to talk about. And it's something that is not exactly canon, but it's something that Toriyama has said in an interview. And this is what I say whenever I say that her ending is kind of horrifying. That in itself, her drinking herself to death, thinking about suicide, that's not good. That's not particularly a great end for poor Blonde Lodge, especially after her character took a 180. But the interview that I'm thinking of was from a television program over in Japan. It's one of those things where they, like, celebrities sit around talking because it makes the Japanese feel like they're connected to friends that they don't have because their culture is fucking terrible. You know, that sort of thing. So, what happened is, at the very end of the program, they had a segment where they sent Akira Toriyama questions, and he responded in text format, like he wasn't physically there. So he wrote these out beforehand. And they asked several questions, and one of them is, tell us about the lives of the characters after the series. Like, this is after Z ended, and this is briefly before Battle of Gods came out, I think. So, he's describing everything that happened to the characters 10 years after the Buu saga. That is, right after the episode with Oob that no one cares about. Stupid episode. So after that, after the very last thing that you ever see with Z, what happened to all the characters? And this is what he's describing. They ask about what happened to Tenshinhan, or just Tien, whatever you want to call him. And his answer is, Stoic Tenshinhan mainly does farming in addition to his training. He can split into multiple bodies and grow extra arms, so harvesting the crops goes quickly. Shut up. Stupid. He was found by Launch, or Ranchi, whatever you want to call her, who fell in love with him at first sight and has been constantly pursuing his whereabouts, and even reluctantly lived together with her. But she wasn't cut out for farming, and Tenshinhan has no interest in romance, so she left after just a few days. After that, it seems Launch apparently stops in from time to time. So, that was his ending for Launch as well. And the funny thing is, his ending for Launch was actually just piled in with Tien, because, let's face it, she's a female character, right? Really, the only thing that she has a use for is just being described in terms of a real male character. Yeah, just like 18. Because this is Akira Toriyama we're talking about. So that in itself seems kind of innocuous enough, but I sat there thinking about it, and the more I thought about it, the more I thought, that's horrifying if you really stop and really think about it. Because look at it this way. He forgets the characters' ages. But at this point, this is 10 years after the Buu saga. And he's kind of retconned characters' ages before. But at this point, I did the math on it, and I think Launch is, at this point that he's talking about, she is, at minimum, 55 years old. So this 50-year-old woman is doing this. And she might be in her 60s. It depends on what he's talking about. If it's like the next day after that final episode, which I kind of doubt, then it would have been that age. But she could be in her 60s by the point that he's talking about, for all we know. And that includes Tien. I think Launch is actually like a year older than Tien is, canonically. I can't remember their exact ages. But I looked it up earlier. So this 50, maybe 60-year-old woman who has only ever loved one person her whole life that has rejected her at every turn because apparently he's asexual or something. I don't know what's going on with him. She finally tracks him down, this 60-year-old woman, and at this point he's kind of given up on his own life's goals because, let's face it, he's a human, so he's completely useless, right? In terms of fighting, but he keeps training because why not? Because that's all humans are good for, just kind of being there behind the Saiyans, because Saiyans are gods. Oh, they are the Christ of Dragon Ball. Fuck off. Anyways, so 60-year-old Tien is taking up farming, because farming. Along with Chaozu, I suppose. He doesn't even mention Chaozu, I think. It's kind of sad. So, we have this 60-year-old woman who has never experienced actual love in her life, and who has had to deal with having a split personality her whole life. Like, this phasing in and out of existence randomly, seemingly. Completely unable to remember half of her actions. Experiencing really half of, like, imagine it this way. If half of her life is spent as Blonde Launch, and half of it is spent as Black-haired Launch, or Blue-haired Launch, then she must feel like she's a 30-year-old woman trapped in this body of like a 50 or 60-year-old woman. because she's only led half of a life, and some of that might even be spent asleep. So she's barely even had a life. And she tracks down this only person that she's ever really cared about or loved or had any affection for whatsoever. Just in a daze because she just came out of like 10 years in a row of being Bluehead launch, right? Tracks him down, is so desperate to try to get out of this lifestyle of robbing banks and just being a horrible human being because that's what she knows, right? Like, I imagine the reason why she's like that is because if you had a split personality and were constantly in this daze of waking up out of non-existence for all this time, then you might end up becoming violent and lashing out against anyone that was around you at the same time. That's probably why she's the way that she is. And that's the reason why it took her so much time to develop real friendships with people, is because she was just constantly angry at everything and everyone around her, because she was just internally confused about her entire life. So 60-year-old Launch tries desperately to abandon this by taking up farming of all things. And I imagine her sitting there with like a rake, 60-year-old Launch, just, hitting the ground like she doesn't know what she's doing. She doesn't understand anything that's happening. She's, and Tien tries to allow her to like live with them for a while, even though he has no interest in her whatsoever for I don't know what reason. Like, I'd be all over that shit in my 20s. But, maybe she's 60 years old now. Maybe that's why. I don't know. But, they're living together. He's trying to allow her to just have a place to stay because she's just a wanderer. She doesn't have a place to live. She's basically just a professional hobo, a 60-year-old hobo. And so she can't deal with this. And I can imagine her having arguments with Tien, like Tien's telling her, no, you need the planet exactly 1 inch underground, or the bean will rot, or whatever it is exactly. You can't plant things this way. And she's just trying to do what she thinks is correct, but she doesn't have any training. She doesn't have any experience with this. The only thing she's ever known is like 20 years of criminal activity. And her being a blonde Launch, I'm sure she's just angry and frustrated and doesn't know what to do and feels frustrated because Tien is still rejecting her after all this time. And she's never really experienced life to its actual fullest. Like, still, just after all these years, just confused and a broken person. And so, after, just sitting there desperately trying to do this, failing miserably, being completely unable to deal with life and everything that has led up to this point, she eventually decides to just give up. Because the man that she loves doesn't love her back. He merely tolerates her presence. And he's letting her stay around out of sheer pity. This pity for who she is. And the most that Tien ever tolerates her seems to be whenever she's not even the person that she believes that she is. Like whenever she turns into this black-haired version. And the black-haired version has no feelings for him at all, as far as we can tell. She might, but, she's black-haired Launch, and she doesn't have a personality beyond just being a living trope. So, she has nothing. And so, just out of frustration, maybe it's the middle of the day, she's just sitting there trying to rake or shovel dirt. This 60-year-old woman just shoveling dirt in the middle of the hot sun. Eventually, just kind of looks over at Tien, inwardly realizes that she has nothing and never will have anything, and just lets it drop out of her hands, just turns and just walks off. Just leaves. Walks off out towards the mountains. Tien briefly looks over at her, doesn't try to stop her, and she's just gone forever. And returns to who knows what. Maybe she returns to a life of crime or whatever. Maybe because that's the only thing that she's ever known. That's the only kind of life that she could ever find any degree of satisfaction with. She just returns to that life of bitter anger and frustration towards everything, trying to get back at the world because she never had anything herself. And so, Akira Toriyama's little innocuous little epilogue for Tien, where, she stops in and it's cute, she tries to farm, but she can't do it. I look at that and I see, oh my god, that is the worst thing I've ever heard in my life. Like, Akira Toriyama, have you not even stopped to think about this at all? Like, this is a nightmare for her. Like, I just explained it as best as I can. But holy shit, imagine how devastated of a person, like, she must be. This old woman that has never known love, never known real acceptance, can't even, like, live her own life because it's being split with another person. This inwardly and outwardly devastated at every turn, and probably is the reason why she is the way that she is, just because of the way that she had to raise herself, because as far as we know, she never had any parents. So, that's my perception of what happens to Launch. Last canon appearance, she drinks herself to death thinking about suicide. Last appearance, as far as Toriyama is concerned, she's a very old woman trying to do hard manual labor in a desperate effort to find acceptance and love, but she can't do it. And no one wants her, so she just wanders off. But she pops in from time to time. She stops by ever so often, just to remind herself whenever she's like 80 years old still trying to rob banks that Tien won't love her, and that Tien himself is completely useless. Because his only goal in life is to be a strong fighter, and he can't even do that because of his genetics. What a great story, Akira Toriyama. What great writing. What a great way to send off your characters. To have all of them just be completely lonely, bitter husks that never knew love, and had goals in life that they couldn't compete with because there were weird alien gods that had everything that ever happened on the Earth revolve completely around them in every way. That's not good. That's what I see, like, as an actual... I guess some people don't know this about me. Like, I used to be a writer. I never got anything published because I never got around to it. I was in the process of sending things out for publication, but whenever I was going through a redraft of one of my books, I kind of just stopped because the animation thing took off, and now here I am doing this sort of thing. But, you know, one of the things I do is writing. I have another project that I hopefully will get around to one day. It's kind of hard because so many other things happen in regards to my actual work. But I am still writing. Like, it's not something I've given up on completely. But I do think in those terms. I think as a writer. I think in terms of characterization, how people actually feel. Like, empathy, even though I'm a cruel human being, I'm a monster. Even though I am, empathy is still, like, one of the core aspects of who I am. Like, I have trouble doing things sometimes because I worry about how it's going to affect other people and whether it's going to make them feel bad or whatever. Like, I constantly have to, I don't have to worry about this as much anymore, but when I was first getting started, especially with the Zabatsu, the Two Best Friends play, I was having to do things with them, and of course they wanted to pay me for it because, you know, I didn't have Patreon at the time. And I didn't really want to accept money because I don't like the idea of taking money away from people. And even with the Patreon, I get really upset and, like, I get angry with some of my fans because they want to give me too much money or they won't stop. I tell them, you know, you only have to do the $50 a month thing one time ever, and you get the commission. Like, that's the only way you'll get a commission out of me, is if you take that route. But some people will they'll sit in that slot and for months, just letting the $50 payout happen. Don't do that. Like, especially with me, you know, coming from a very poor background, I never really had much of anything myself. Like, the idea of people wasting money just drives me crazy. The idea of causing that problem to anyone else is, like, an intense source of frustration for me. Like, it really is. So, I'm very empathetic is what I'm getting. Like, I'm mean. I'm very mean. And, you know, I kind of do it for amusing, but I'm always trying to think about other people, and, like, I swerve out of the way of, like, woolly worms on the road, for Christ's sake. Like, I'm always thinking about things that I shouldn't be thinking about. My dad is actually the complete opposite. He's very selfish. He doesn't, like, he'll even, like, just slam doors whenever people are trying to concentrate on something else. He's kind of just in his own world, kind of an asshole, and completely the opposite. I'm more of my mother's side. Like, she was also an artist, so forth and so on. But anyways, in terms of like writing, like that's where I'm coming from. I'm always thinking about things like, what is the worst possible outcome for this character? What are they actually like? So, anyways, okay, but enough of that. Point being, Launch's life is complete and total suffering. But Lanli's life starts anew. Like, one of the you can tell why I wanted to use the blonde one specifically and not the black-haired one. And I didn't want to incorporate the whole sneezing joke into any of these character designs. That's something I definitely don't want to get into. As far as the combination of these two designs, like in terms of their personality, since we're talking about personality, combine what I just said with Launch with 18. And I'll talk more about 18 in the next video, since it'll be a combination of 18 and Zanya doesn't really have a personality. She has about as much personality, or even a little bit more so, than blue-haired Launch does. But we'll get around to 18 by then, and she has her own things in regards to a lot of her personality, even as an android, comes from her lifestyle of supposedly being a do-nothing, like a vagrant. I don't know why Toriyama likes vagrant women so much, but that's kind of a running theme. And so whenever you're combining their two personalities, of Launch and her, you're going to get a character just like that. Someone that's inwardly very frustrated, angry, kind of at everything, but also very vulnerable, but someone that's actually looking for love in all the wrong places. Looking for love in all the wrong places, looking for love. So, they're kind of in a way, 18 is sort of the spiritual successor to Launch, since the reason why she never showed back up, and this is the stupidest fucking reason, it makes me so angry. She never showed back up, Launch, blonde-hair Launch. Or even, she briefly showed up in Battle of Gods movie in like a few frames of animation, the black-haired version, until Bulma stepped in front of her. It's like, no, you only get that little bit. We can't admit that she's a real character. But the reason why is because Akira Toriyama said that her gimmick of changing personalities, going from black hair to blonde hair, was too confusing. Because people would think that she's a Super Saiyan, and it doesn't make any sense. So we can't possibly use her again, because people are just not smart enough to understand that. And a lot of people, since I forgot about her, don't even know that she exists anyways. How could we possibly explain who this person is? Even though in Super recently they showed they showed a brief scene of Ader, of all people. And they have no problem doing that. Whatever. It's probably for the best. I would rather Launch be a symbol of Toriyama's shame as a writer, rather than her get brought back to be shat upon in some way. But the sheer fact that she does not exist anymore, and they refuse to bring her back at all, just because of Goku and Vegeta and Trunks and all the other fucking Super Saiyans, that to me is... That's what gets me riled up more than anything else. Anyways, this physical combination of the two designs, getting sidetracked, looks pretty good as far as I'm concerned. Had some problems with the colors. But I kind of happened upon this idea that she looks like she's straight out of the 1980s. And I thought, I like that idea. Because that stark blueness of 18's designs. I'm not going to use her stupid cowboy outfit. That thing's fucking stupid. But the stark blueness of her designs mixed with... I like her sleeves. Like her shirt with the sleeves. I like that too. Mixed with Launch's kind of green and kind of tan kind of look. I think it works out pretty well. If you're going to drop into another part of the spectrum with a brown, it's probably either going to be an orange or a red, and that's kind of what I went with that. Whenever you mix it with a blue, you're probably going to get sort of more of a magenta anyways. So that's the reason why she kind of has that pink bottom there. And it really brings out the color of that blue-green that's everywhere else on her design. I'm glad I went with the blue ribbon, too. I think that looks nice. Kind of just did that because of all the blue on the 18's design. And of course, once again, it's much smaller than it is on Launch's design because it's not present on 18's design, therefore it has to be smaller. That's how fusing things together works. I also gave her the android eyes that I promised, and they are green this time rather than just being blue. Aren't I a clever boy? But worked out pretty well, I think. I kind of prefer the first one I did, the Zanya, or the whatever, not... Yeah, it was Zanya, wasn't it? No, it's Lanya. The Lanya design. I prefer a little bit more. So far we have Lanya, we have Lanli. A little too similar there, but what can be done? The next one's going to be a combination of Android 18 and Zangia. Maybe I'll call her Android Z this time, even though that's stupid. What can be done? And then we'll take those 3 characters, and then we will fuse them all together in one last penultimate video. So, you guys look forward to that. I will continue stewing in anger over what happened to my beloved waifu, as I continue to persist in this lonely, cold, desolate world on my own. Magnificent. Alright, hope you guys enjoyed me rambling. Hope you enjoyed the video. I will see you guys in the next video. So long. Don't donate to my Patreon, I guess.